Shannon, talk a little bit about your adaptability this year. I mean, you've morphed into a lot of different things over the course of the season, and now, of course, in the playoffs, the defense is at a whole nother level. So just talk about how you've had to adapt week to week.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it's probably that way every year. I mean, game plans week to week are going to change based on the defenses you're playing, the things you're doing good. You know, a lot of it has to do with the people across the ball and how they're programmed and how they're built. But ultimately, every year is a figuring out what you're good at type journey. You know, and we've kind of settled into the spot where we're at right now, and we're having some success versus some very high quality defenses, and we feel good about where we're at.
Shannon, with that, just what stands out about Ole Miss's defense as you start to prepare for them?
Very athletic. You know, they're built, I mean, probably pretty similar to us. I mean, their edge guys are really good. They get off the ball. Their back end runs around. Pete mixes it up a good bit. I've known him for a while. He's been a good DC for a long time now, obviously head coach, but they do a great job on defense. Very athletic, just they move the front around a good bit. I mean, the guy in the middle is what, 6'8", big boy, and so they can push the pocket, they can move the pocket, and they can bend the edges, which makes it challenging.
On the first touchdown call, it was a heavy personnel, right? Had you thrown out of that look all year yet?
Not out of that look. Malley threw it out of the Mallet formation. I don't know if you remember that. He threw it to Pringle and missed him.
Okay.
I forget what game that was in, but
okay.
But we've ran it out of different sets, not that exact set.
Right. But the jumbo look, that was kind of the first time Carson.
Yeah. He'd been begging for some quarterback run game all year, so I figured I'd put a quarterback counter in that he would have the option to throw it if they gave him the right look. So he was probably hoping they covered Mark and he could run it, but they left him open, so he spit it out to him. It was a great read by him.
Shannon, what did you make of Carson's game last game? Just how he played?
I thought he played, very efficient. He took what the defense gave from the very beginning. He never put the ball in jeopardy. The ball was always going to the right place. The third downs was elite, really. We were over almost 60%, 55% against one of the top third down defenses in the nation. And part of that is him getting the ball out to the right spot very accurately, and the conversions of third down at the end of the game were key, and he made all the right checks. A couple of those plays were, there was a couple different calls, and he had to pick the right one versus the right defense, and he got it right every time. And some of the stuff he did in the run game was elite. It's been elite for the last few weeks. Not that it hadn't been the whole season, but our receivers do a phenomenal job blocking, and he does a good job gearing them in the right direction, because it's a process. Our run game is a process. It's a process of communication and getting people to block the right people, and they do a good job working together and communicating together.
You've talked so much the last couple of years about wanting the simple plays, the regular rep by rep plays to be perfect.
Yeah.
Obviously, so many people talk about wanting to see the bigs, the explosives, this, that, the other, but the way you guys are playing right now, is this sort of what you like to see, where, again, you're executing what you need to execute, and then the big plays there, the big plays there?
A lot of the big plays are dictated by the defense that's played. If you look at that game, they played, the safety was in the middle of the field most of the game. So when the safety's in the middle of the field most of the game, you're not going to complete a post route. So, and corners were giving us some loose coverage for the most of the game. And with that, you're not going to complete a lot of go routes. And so a lot of the stuff we completed was underneath based on, that's what the defense was giving us. And, we have a bunch of routes that go down the field and on basically every concept, but if the first guy's open and it's just so happened to be in a shorter range, the ball is going to go there based on what the defense is doing. So, I love taking shots more than anybody, and, but you can't just take it for no apparent reason. If they're there, they're there. And, there was a couple times we caught them in quarters or man coverage, and we threw the vertical to CJ. Corner made a good play, and then we had a route down the middle to Malley that I thought. I mean, we caught him in the right coverage. He kind of got grabbed a little bit, so it hung him up, and so Carson came off to Keelan and threw the curl route. And so we had a couple opportunities down the field, but they did a pretty good job of covering it up at the right times, and you know, and I do stress the fact that I like calling shots. I like taking them when they're there, but if they're not there, checking it down and getting 6 yards, 2nd and 4 is better than a 2nd and 10 incomplete ball. Does that make sense? And that happened a lot in that game. And I think 8 or 9 of the 3rd downs were in medium or less. So that was a big emphasis from the A&M game to that game. Was, hey, I wanted to get in 3rd and manageable so we could convert them and keep drives going. I knew the nature of their defense too. I mean, you know, they haven't given up a lot of explosive plays all year. You know, I think they give up around 8 points a game. You know, so you know you got to be methodical in those situations and take what they give, and hopefully you make some of those deals underneath and make it a big play. But just so happened they tackle pretty damn good too. You know, and so it's one of those deals.
Carson played against Ole Miss last year.
Yeah.
Do you go back and watch that tape? Is there any value to doing that? Do you have any takeaways from that game, how he performed?
No, I did. I mean, I've watched the last couple of seasons of Ole Miss, and you know, yeah, I mean, you take things away from every game, obviously, but you know, we have more focused on the recent history of them. I do just go back and kind of peek.
You guys have been good with ball security all year, and then
I know.
4 fumbles last game, lost 2 of them. Just how much more of an emphasis has ball security been in practice as of late?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be even a bigger emphasis in the next couple of days because we got very fortunate in that game. I mean, our ball security has been good all year, but it wasn't great in that game. And you know, we turned it over one time in the red zone that would have cost us points. Points in those games were obviously vital. And you know, there was a couple times we put the ball on the ground, and there was a couple times the ball got loose and like didn't get on the ground. But you know, we got to secure the football. I mean, we make a huge point of when the football is in your hand, the program's in your hand. You know, so you got to take care of the ball. And the one that Malley had was it just so happened to bounce right back up to him, which was very fortunate. But yeah, we got to secure the ball better, which we have all year. That game was not up to our standard for sure, but it'll be addressed. It's been addressed. Thankfully, we have a bunch of guys that know already. You know, you don't really have to tell them, so I feel certain that they're going to take ownership of it.
Darryl Street of Kingville. Coach Murray Cristobal has emphasized building the program through the offensive and defensive line. How much does having confidence in your trenches change the way you can call on a game, a stage like the Fiesta Bowl?
I mean, I think it gives you a chance. You know, I mean, in those games where, you know, there was everybody left playing is pretty good up front, especially D-line. And so when you get in those situations where there's 5 minutes left to go in the game and you're up, well, we're up 3, right? Was that right? 6? We're up 6 with 5 minutes. In those kind of situations, it's hard to grind it out if you're not elite in the trenches. And so, and really from the beginning of the game, you could tell that we could handle them up front. You know, our O-line did a good job from the beginning. That's a good feeling for a play caller, you know. It's been the other way a lot in my career, and when it's the other way, you tend to, you know it, you can feel it, you know what I mean? So yeah, it gives you some freedom to call the game in a certain way, and you can always know that, hey man, if we gotta lean on those guys at the end to grind it out, we have a pretty good chance.
We're gonna switch it over to Zoom now. I wanna make sure you have an opportunity to ask our questions. Carter, if you wanna go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, James. We do have some questions on Zoom, and we'll start with Manny Navarro. Manny, go ahead.
Hey, Coach Dawson. You guys have obviously played Shamar Brown a lot during the season, but I think you started that game-winning drive with Fletcher getting the first 2 carries. Just if you could speak to the decision of kind of putting Marty in there in that spot, you know, did you make that call? Did running backs don't pick the call. How did it kind of come about? And then obviously he was a big hero there in that game.
Yeah, I mean, Marty's been, every time his number's called, he shows up. I mean, kid's got a phenomenal attitude. You know, at some point in your life as an athlete, things aren't going to go exactly the way you want it to go. And so how you handle those situations are vital. And he stayed extremely positive these last couple games when he wasn't getting the touches that he had been getting earlier in the year. And obviously, you know, at that point, Coach Merritt does a great job of feeling people and feeling the game. And he felt that Marty was the one we would tilt to if Mark needed a break at that point in the game, it's a physical game. And he went to him, and he's been pretty spot on through the course of his time here with who to put in the game. And I trust him with that. So he did a heck of a job there. And Marty did a phenomenal job coming in and really finishing the game off. And the third down catch was really vital. And then the runs at the end were crucial.
Next, we'll go to Brandon Marcello. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, Shannon, I was wondering, you know, the defense has just made astonishing improvements year over year, statistically, analytically. Just how much has that defense really complemented your offense this season? And from seeing it up close, have you ever seen something like this year over year?
No, I'm trying to compliment them, to be quite honest with you. I mean, they're an elite group, and Corey does a heck of a job. And, you know, there's been times in my career where we've had to score 40 points to win games, and there's been a couple times in my career that's been like this. You know, there was one year at Houston where we were, I think, the 4th or 5th ranked defense in the nation, and we won 12. We were good on offense. We were efficient on offense. We weren't like one of the top in the nation on offense. And ultimately, you know, you do kind of conform to who the team is. There's no ego with me. Like, look, I just want to win the game. And I know that our defense is playing at an extremely high level. And so there are situations in the game where I'm cautiously aggressive because I don't want to put those guys in a tough situation. And I do trust those guys with everything. And, you know, and there's also times in the game where, you know, when Ohio State came out the second half and we were having some success with some tempo, you know, they weren't really getting lined up. And then when Ohio State came out the second half and had a drive that was long, like an 8-minute drive. And so in those kind of situations too, I've kind of huddle a little bit more and try to grind out a couple first downs to give us some time to catch our breath. So it is a complete understanding of how the flow of the game is going. And I do have it in the back of my mind about those guys over there when they are out there on the field a lot. And so it doesn't always work out that way because, heck, sometimes you do that and you go 3 and out and you feel like an idiot, you know? And so there's nothing worse than going 3 and out when the defense was on the field for 8 minutes. And so I thought, you know, there was a lot of things in that game, momentum changes and all the rest, but the key turning point in that game was, this is my opinion, was when they came out the second half and scored. And if we get stopped there, then it's 14-7 and it's a dogfight. But we took it and drove down. We didn't score, but we kicked the field goal. You know, 50-yard field goal, great kick. But that drive and that little turn of events kind of stopped the momentum a little bit. And then our defense got back out there and gained their footing. And so I thought that was a crucial turn in the game for us to go down and get some points at that time.
We got time for 2 more on Zoom. We'll first go to Andrea Adelson. Andrea, go ahead.
Hey, Shannon, I was wondering, Mario just said that the team didn't really handle the success in the early part of the season well. And I was wondering from an offensive perspective, if you could speak to that and whether that kind of affected some of the inconsistencies that we saw with the offense around mid-season and just locking in and eliminating distractions, whether that's helped with the efficiency we've seen from the offense here over the last 6 games.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that, you know, our group through the course of the year didn't handle success the way you should handle success. And the way you handle success is really, you got a clean slate every week. You know, you can't let the pats on the back soften your approach, which basically is the hardest thing to do, is to battle complacency through the course of a winning run, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, I thought that was and really I think it has a lot to do with just mental focus. You know, whenever you're dialed in and you're focused to the point where you have that edge to you and you're preparing the right way, you tend to be more efficient when you play and you execute better. And that's one thing that we've stressed since that little rough patch is just respecting every opponent you play. And, you know, it's more about us and our edge and our mental focus than it is about the people across the ball. But I'm very aware of the handling of success is way harder than handling failure. Typically when you have failure, you bounce back because you go back to the ground and you start grinding and all the rest. But success will soften you, and you'll start thinking you're as good as the people that are typing on the keyboard that are telling you you're good. And so ultimately, if you can stay somewhere grounded in the middle, I think you'll be a much better person, a much better player.
And we'll wrap up with Adam Kuhn. Adam, go ahead.
Hey Coach, Adam Keenan, Chronicle News. You talked a little bit about not having an ego as a play caller and staying on schedule, not really forcing the issue with the way your defense is playing. Just how much does having an experienced quarterback like Carson, who's willing to buy into that and kind of get the other guys, to buy into that philosophy, how does that help you as a play caller?
I mean, his mentality and approach to the game is, every year is different, His mentality and his approach to the game is exactly what this team needed and needs. He sees football in a very different way. So he understands the makeup of this team. He understands our role. Now, with everything that's being said, I still try to score every time we get the damn ball. That's not ever going to change. But how we do it obviously changes, and the understanding of the flow of the game changes. But his understanding of taking what the defense gives is really what makes him him. He really doesn't put the ball in jeopardy a lot. And to go back to the previous question, that was really what bit us in the ass early in the year. Was like, we turned the ball over, and which it didn't really affect the game as far as points, but it took possessions away from us. We need possessions. I don't mind losing a possession like a pick six for a touchdown. That's a great way to lose a possession. But when you lose it the other way, it affects the game in a very negative way.